After discovering the first T-shaped pillar buried at the site, he soon found more of these massive structures.
Göbekli Tepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that it was a marker. It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place, and left it there, finally at the end burying it, sealing it as a time capsule, which then was untouched for more than 10,000 years.
On his deathbed, Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who stunned the world with Göbekli Tepe, whispered a final truth. Not about the hilltop temples that made him famous, but about another place. A place hidden beneath streets, homes, and farmland near the Turkish city of Sanliurfa. A place he called Gurutepe. And what he revealed about this forgotten site was so shocking, it threatened to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. This is the story he refused to take to the grave. Göbekli Tepe. The name echoes like legend. Discovered in the 1990s, it upended history. Towering T-shaped pillars, carved with animals and symbols, standing on a lonely hilltop for over 11,000 years. Before cities, before writing, before the wheel. Klaus Schmidt spent his life there, pulling back the soil to reveal humanity's first monumental temples. But as the world's cameras fixated on Göbekli Tepe, Schmidt was quietly digging elsewhere. 2 miles away, on the flat Harran Plain, a place no one cared about, a place that didn't look like much at all. To most people, it was just farmland. To Schmidt, it was the missing piece. Gurutepe. From the air, it doesn't impress. No dramatic hill, no towering stone rings, just low mounds scattered across the landscape, half buried beneath houses, roads, and fields. 8 mounds in total, spread across an area nearly a mile wide, most of it already swallowed by modern construction. But Schmidt saw something others missed. Surveys showed layers stacked deep under the soil, some over 6 meters thick, layers that told a story stretching thousands of years, from the late Neolithic through the first appearance of pottery, all the way to the Roman Age. This wasn't a one-period wonder. This was a settlement that refused to die. And buried inside those layers, Schmidt believed, was the key to understanding what came after Göbekli Tepe.
When excavations began, the difference was obvious. Göbekli Tepe was monumental. Gurutepe was domestic. No giant pillars, no vast ceremonial enclosures. Instead, hearths for cooking. Rectangular houses with stone foundations. Workshops littered with flint flakes, grinding stones, beads, and bracelets. This was not a temple. This was a town. And that contrast fascinated Schmidt. At Göbekli Tepe, communities gathered from miles around to build temples of awe. But at Gurutepe, they lived. They farmed, herded sheep and goats, cooked meals, and shaped stone into tools. Even their symbols were different. Where Göbekli Tepe had megaliths carved with animals and abstract signs, Gurutepe had small figurines. Men, women, genderless forms, some especially striking. Heavy-bodied female figurines, perhaps symbols of fertility or abundance. But unlike the monumental pillars, these weren't meant to tower above the plains. They fit in your hand. Objects of home and hearth, not pilgrimage and spectacle. It was life, after the age of monuments. Schmidt began to see a pattern. For years, some believed Gurutepe might be the home base of the Göbekli Tepe builders, the place where the people who raised the pillars lived. But the evidence didn't fit. The architecture was younger. The tools were different. The pottery appeared later. Layer by layer, the truth became clearer. Gurutepe was not the beginning. It was the aftermath. A community built after Göbekli Tepe's enclosures had already fallen silent.
This was the transition from the age of vast communal temples to the age of settled households, from ritual spectacle to survival. And for Schmidt, that realization changed everything. Klaus Schmidt rarely spoke of Gurutepe in public. He guarded it like a secret, but in private, he hinted at its importance. Colleagues remembered him comparing the two sites, the hilltop temple and the plain-based settlement. And in 2014, shortly before his death, Schmidt finally confessed what he believed. He told a colleague, "I can't keep this hidden." The shocking truth, he said, was this: Göbekli Tepe was not the start of something. It was the end. The final flowering of a tradition that had been building for centuries. A grand finale, not a beginning. And Gurutepe? It was the world that came after. The moment when humanity turned away from building monuments and began building homes. It was the missing piece. The chapter that rewrote the story.
Years after Schmidt's death, in 2021 and 2022, archaeologists finally returned to Gurutepe. They had only a small window left. Most of the site was buried under houses and streets. In the largest open patch, they opened a 30 by 30 foot excavation grid. What they found echoed Schmidt's notes: stone houses, workshops filled with flint tools, beads, and ornaments, hearths still blackened from ancient fires. Layer after layer showed the same story: people farming, crafting, living. The evidence was clear. This was a permanent community, not a ceremonial gathering place. And crucially, the dating confirmed Schmidt's suspicion. The main occupation of Gurutepe came after the great stone temples of Göbekli Tepe were abandoned. Schmidt had been right. So why does this matter? Because for decades, Göbekli Tepe has been treated like an anomaly, a lost golden age of mystery, a sudden leap in complexity, followed by a mysterious collapse. But Gurutepe changes that story. It shows that people didn't vanish when the temples ended. They adapted. They reorganized their lives. They shifted from monument building to household living, from hilltop rituals to fertile plains. The story isn't about collapse. It's about transformation. Humanity didn't stop. It evolved. And that evolution is just as important as the stones on the hilltop. Today, much of Gurutepe is already gone. Modern houses, asphalt roads, urban sprawl pressing down on ancient layers. Only fragments survive. Precious windows into a vanished world. Without protection, even those fragments could disappear. But Schmidt's final warning still rings. He wanted the world to know that the story of the Neolithic wasn't written only in stone pillars. It was also written in homes, hearths, and humble figurines, in the quiet life that came after the temples fell silent. Klaus Schmidt's last revelation was not about a lost treasure or hidden monument. It was about time. Göbekli Tepe wasn't humanity's first step. It was a milestone, the end of one era and the beginning of another. And Gurutepe, the forgotten site buried beneath a modern city, holds the proof. Proof that our ancestors didn't collapse in mystery. They adapted, they endured, and they carried the spark of civilization forward. So the next time we look at Göbekli Tepe's towering stones, we should also remember the homes and hearths of Gurutepe. Because sometimes the most important chapters in history aren't written in monuments, but in the lives of the people who came after. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.